In this video, we'll be covering the four main macroeconomic aims. The first is high employment. When people want to work but cannot find a job, they're considered unemployed. The government wants to achieve high employment due to the following reasons. Unemployed people do not produce any goods or services. The total output of a country will be lower than it could be, causing a fall in GDP. The second reason is that the government has to pay an unemployment benefit to those who don't have a job. A high level of unemployment will cost the government a lot of money, which could have been rather spent on services such as roads or healthcare. So the ways to reduce unemployment include creating jobs in the public sector, maybe through large-scale infrastructure projects, which could require a large workforce. And the second is to provide incentives to business to create jobs, maybe through tax breaks or co-funding. A real-life example is that in India, the unemployment rate stands at 7.91%, with urban areas averaging 9.3% of unemployment and rural areas at 7.28%. The next macroeconomic aim is low inflation. Inflation occurs when prices rise, and it can be defined as the increase in the average price level of goods and services over a period of time. Inflation can occur when prices rise due to an increase in production costs, such as raw materials and wages. An increase in demand for products and services can also cause inflation, as consumers are willing to pay more for the product. The government wants to achieve low inflation due to the following reasons. Workers' wages will not buy as many goods as before. This means that the value of workers' wages will decrease because workers can no longer buy as many goods as compared to before. For example, if prices have risen by 4 cents, workers are still purchasing the same amount of goods, but just for a higher price. Second reason is that prices of goods produced in the country will be higher than those in other countries. As a result, people may buy foreign goods and jobs in that country will be lost. So the government can use wage and price controls to fight inflation, but this may lead to recession and job losses. In India, the inflation rate averaged 5.97% for the last 10 years.
High economic growth. What is economic growth, firstly? It involves increasing the total output of a country produced by resources in that economy, and it can be measured by an increase in real GDP, or the increase in market value of goods and services produced in that country or economy in a given period of time. A higher output in 1 year compared to the previous year signifies higher living standards, as there is higher availability of goods and services, higher income, and higher employment opportunities. As mentioned before, it is measured by calculating GDP, which shall be covered in a different video. Economic growth is one of the most important macroeconomic aims for a country, as a higher economic growth can improve the living standards and the economy in the long run, bringing additional benefits such as higher employment, etc. It is crucial to always increase economic growth. There are many causes of economic growth. Discovery of natural resources, meaning higher production as more resources are there. A higher output will result, and thus a higher GDP. For example, the discovery of oil has greatly strengthened many economies by adding output of oil in the market and increase the economic growth there. Number 2, investment in new capital infrastructure. This can include machines, road, or other technology to expand the scale of production for firms in the country, decrease their average costs, leading to higher willingness to produce more goods from firms. These investments can help improve access to resources and communications for firms to expand the overall productive potential of the economy, which will undoubtedly increase the overall output. There are several more ways an economy can improve the output in the country and thus economic growth. In short, all policies governments can use, monetary, fiscal, or supply side, all of these focus on either changing demand or supply. And it's these two factors that drive a market and the output the market provides. So, in the long run, These policies are used to increase economic growth. However, like every economic activity, there are always consequences to economic growth. Some good, some bad. Benefits of economic growth include greater availability of goods and services to satisfy the wide range of consumers' needs and wants, increased employment opportunities and incomes for workers, increased sales and profits, or increased business opportunities for firms, higher tax revenues for a government that can be invested in more and better roads, schools, or healthcare, and overall, higher living standards and economic welfare. Drawbacks, however, include unequal distribution of income, especially if the benefits of the growth are concentrated among a group of people. Technological progress may replace workers with machines, so unemployment may rise in the future. Economic growth causes faster consumption of resources and natural resources such as oil, coal, gas, or wood from forests. This means the quality of the environment may decrease in the future due to this rapid consumption of resources to fuel the economic growth, and many more. So, that's a brief summary of economic growth, an indicator of an economy's strength, and a tool that can be used to compare the size of different economies around the world. The fourth and final macroeconomic aim: a stable balance of payments. What is a balance of payments, you may ask? It is the statement of all transactions made between entities in one country and the rest of the world over a defined period of time. This balance of payments transactions consist of imports and exports of goods, services, and capital, as well as transfer payments such as foreign aid and remittances, meaning a sum of money sent as a gift. A country's balance of payments tells you whether it saves enough to pay for its imports, which are basically goods produced outside the boundaries of one country, which are then purchased by that country. A balance of payments deficit means the country imports more goods, services, or capital than it exports. It must borrow from other countries to pay for its imports. In this situation, in the long term, the country becomes a net consumer, not a producer, of the world's economic output, as they import more than they export, as mentioned before. The country may have to go into debt to pay for consumption instead of investing in its own future growth. And if the deficit continues long enough, the country may have to sell its assets to pay its creditors. These assets include natural resources, land, and commodities. In the long run, this can cause countries to run into heavy debt, which is why it is crucial to keep a stable balance of payments. A balance of payments surplus would be the opposite of that: more exports than imports. Exports are goods and services that are produced in one country and sold to buyers in another. A surplus boosts economic growth in the short term. There are enough excess savings to lend to countries that buy its products. This increased exports boosts production in its factories, allowing them to hire more people. In the long run, the country becomes too dependent on export-driven growth, however. It must encourage its residents to spend more on imports, or else events within the country that threaten production may cripple the whole economy due to the increased reliance on domestic goods. Thus, as mentioned before, keeping a stable balance of payments is necessary to have a healthy economy in the long run. This topic is not really gone into depth for boards such as IGCSE. An overall understanding of the concept will undoubtedly be helpful to strengthen your understanding of the dynamics of economics in international markets. A real life